Imagine breathing in the romance of the City of Lights, feeling the energy of creation and artistic expression that lingers at every corner of the city. Picture yourself dining on the finest foods and savoring exquisite tasting experiences. Transport yourself to the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, and the incredible River Seine. Enjoy the grandeur of the Can-Can and the empowered women of burlesque. And amidst all of the beauty and magic of Paris, imagine yourself building incredible friendships with a small group of fellow goddesses on this same journey of feminine exploration and embracing who you are as outrageous women. Join me for 7 days in the City of Love and City of Light for Lady Grey's Outrageous Paris Retreat in May of 2022. For more information, please visit paris.liveoutrageously.com.
Hello, you lovely humans. Welcome to the Live Outrageously with Lady Grey podcast. I'm your hostess, Lady Grey, and today's episode is actually a mini-sode. So rather than interviewing someone, I'll be talking about some topics that are near and dear to my heart. All of us struggle with fear and with worry from time to time. In fact, in most cases, fear is actually a good and a healthy thing because it causes us to do things like wear seatbelts and eat healthy. It also keeps us from doing things that'll hurt us, like getting too close to a fire or jumping into a lion's cage at the zoo or something. It's also really natural to be concerned about your health, your bank account, your job status, your kids, and more. And when something threatens one of those things, we take notice. And so we work really hard to protect ourselves and those that we love. And in some ways, fear is a natural and a helpful part of the human experience. But if your fear gets out of control, it can and it will take over and prevent you from enjoying life. So when we're consumed by fear, we can't really be fully present for other people or do the things that we love. Overwhelming fear can affect our health. It saps our strength. It makes it difficult to concentrate, robs us of sleep, a whole list of things. It also keeps us from taking any risks. If we're afraid, then we don't do things like start new businesses or write books or initiate relationships. And we'll constantly just continue to play it safe, always trying to kind of insulate ourselves from any negative consequences. And so when we play it safe, we don't grow, we stagnate, and we really begin to miss out on great opportunities. And we can't run from fear or hope that it just sort of goes away. There's always going to be something to worry about. So if we're going to successfully navigate the difficult world that we all live in, we are going to need effective strategies for coping with worry and coping with fear. So we must be able to deal with that anxiety in a healthy and a productive way. So I'm sure that all of you are super familiar with FDR's famous quote. He said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And that isn't 100% true because there are real things to fear. But his point is well made because fear holds us back from living life to the fullest. So we really need to learn how to overcome the fear and move towards the things that we desire. And so to live a more outrageous life, we're going to talk today about some strategies for facing and overcoming your fear. And hopefully you learn something effective, a healthy strategy for you for handling your own worries and anxieties. Your fears are not just going to suddenly vanish, but hopefully I can give you some ideas of ways to face those fears and deal with them. So let's start by talking about what fear actually is. The first thing that is really important to recognize is that it is a biological response to a stimulus, whether that's internal or external. So let's break it down. So when you're afraid, your body is going to go into fight or flight mode. Easy for me to say. Your heart rate goes up and your adrenaline increases, your brain starts to race, and you start to sweat. All these things together are going to create this emotion of fear. And that can arise from inside of you or from something external. So thinking about losing your job, for example, would be an internal stimulus. You're doing the thinking and it causes fear. Coming face to face with a grizzly bear would be an external stimulus, right? That would cause you fear. So when you're dealing with your own struggles, it is important to understand the source of the fear. Is it coming from something internal or is it coming from something external? What you'll probably find is that most of your fears are internally created. That's just the hard, cold truth. Very, very rarely are you going to find yourself in an actual life or death situation with a grizzly bear. Most of the time, you are afraid because of what you think will happen rather than what is actually happening. So to put this another way, most of your fears are actually a response to an imagined reality. And that feels a little harsh, I know, but what you feel is real. But the things that you are thinking, the circumstances you're imagining, aren't. And the fundamental truth is that for most, fear is a response just to an imagined reality. Let's give an example. So, for example, say you find a little strange lump on your neck, and immediately you begin to fear the worst. You think that you've got a bad disease. Are you actually sick? You will not know until you see the doctor. But you're scared. You're afraid nonetheless. You are worrying in response to your imagination. So when you understand the true nature of your fear, it becomes a little bit easier to overcome it. You can kind of step back from it. You're able to closely examine the anxiety and determine if there's really any substance to it. Some of your worries may have merit, but you're probably going to discover that most of them don't. And even the ones that do have merit probably aren't nearly as bad as you imagine. So we can do a couple things here, right? So changing your biological response. So before we talk about changing the fearful thoughts, let's talk about changing your fearful body. As we said a couple minutes ago, when you're afraid, it affects your body in all these different ways. And when your body's ramped up, it's really, really hard to control your thinking. So one of the most effective ways to deal with fear is to take control of your body. So when you can get rid of the physical effects of the fear, it becomes much easier to dispel the mental effects of the fear. So how the heck do we do that? Basically, these are all things that you probably already know, but it's just putting these into perspective and recognizing that these are actual steps that you can take. The first would be exercise. When you work out, your body releases endorphins, it makes you feel good, and the tightness in your chest will melt away. Your mind is going to slow down. You get more clarity. And if you're feeling really worried, going for like a quick walk or hitting the gym is a great solution. Doing breathing exercises. This sounds kind of silly, but when you're anxious, you're going to breathe rapidly, right? And it raises your heart rate. It increases kind of your muscle tension. It can even cause you to be dizzy. It has a lot of different effects. So focusing on changing your breathing pattern to inhaling really slowly through your nose, holding your breath for several seconds, and then slowly exhaling and repeating that will begin to dissipate that anxiety. You're going to feel different physically. Another way that you can change your biology would be to try and relax your muscles. I really love progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR. It's a technique for releasing your muscles that are super, super tense. And basically what you do is you start by kind of flexing your toes for 10 seconds and then releasing them for 10 seconds. And you do the same thing with your calves and then your thighs and so on up your body. It's a little tricky and requires some concentration if you haven't done it before. But because of that, it also slows you down and helps you just have a little bit better body awareness. And then one more thing that you can do that is just, again, common sense is to eat and sleep right. So your diet and how much you sleep, when you go to bed, when you wake up, it has a huge impact on the way that you feel. And as much as you possibly can, try to eat healthy foods, avoid processed ones. I sound like your mother. I'm sorry. Stay away from alcohol and caffeine if you're having anxiety problems, because that is not going to serve you well. And shoot for somewhere between 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night if you can. So those are all different ways that we can take a little bit of the physiological response to fear out of the equation. Once you've done that, it's sort of a little bit easier to begin to identify the fear and to name it, right? So in other words, you need to be able to specifically name the thing that you are afraid of. If you're not really clear regarding the source of your anxiety, you're going to struggle to resolve it. So you can ask yourself some questions to try to identify this. So you can say, what am I afraid of, or why am I afraid of it? What do I try not to think about, right? What do I avoid thinking about because it scares me? When do I feel afraid? What emotions do I feel? What pictures do I have in my head about this situation? All of those are great ways to sort of begin to ask yourself about this. So when you're identifying your fear, just keep pushing until you get to the root cause, right? So you want to work to determine what the root fear is that's causing all your other anxieties. So a lot of people stop and they don't actually get to what the real crux of the issue is. So when you're asking yourself these questions, what you want to do is keep asking, so what? So what, right? So for example, so what if I lose my job? Well, the answer would be, I won't make any money. So what if I don't make any money? Well, the answer would be, I can't pay the bills. Okay, so what if I can't pay the bills? I can't provide for my family. So you get to that and you realize the root is the fear of not being able to provide for your family. And then it's important to also figure out how it's affecting your life. So is it causing you constant emotional stress? Is it hampering your relationships or hurting you, like your work performance, or preventing you from enjoying the present or being present with your family? So the goal of all of this is to try to bring you face to face with what the consequences of your fear are. So when you see how worry and anxiety kind of damage your life and hold you back, you become much more motivated to take action to face this. It might help if you're doing this and you're listening and you're near a pen and paper. It might even help to write out your thoughts as you're working through all of this. It helps you just sort of organize things and think a little more clearly. And it also forces you to give a voice to your anxious thoughts and your feelings. So you really can't avoid fear. The more you try to avoid it, the more it's going to grow. The only way forward is to look it in the eye and to confront your fears face to face, put a name to them, and then begin to dismantle them. So how the heck do we do that? Considering the worst and the best case scenarios can really dramatically alter your perspective and give you some clarity about your fears. So when you feel afraid, think about the worst case scenario. So if everything went wrong, what is the absolute worst that could happen? And now, what are the odds of that actually happening? They're probably pretty low. The worst case very, very rarely ever happens. So for example, if you're afraid of public speaking, the worst that could happen is you freeze up on stage, you can't say anything, you're completely embarrassed. But will that happen? Probably not. And even if it did, would it actually be that bad? I mean, sure, you would be embarrassed, but that's about it. So when you engage in worst case thinking, you'll often discover that the worst isn't nearly as bad as you think it is. And after thinking through the worst case, think through the best case now. So if everything goes right, what awesome things do you think you'll experience? Instead of freezing on stage, you knock it out of the park, you get a standing ovation, you receive tons of compliments, or get invited to speak at other places. Your confidence goes through the roof. When you envision the good things that are going to come your way, it motivates you to take action and face that fear. So you're going to be able to see what you'll miss out on if you let that worry control you. Is everything going to go perfectly? Probably not. But the reality is that things don't have to go perfectly for you to reap the benefits of taking action. Now, to be super clear, there are going to be times when the worst case scenario is really bad, like with a cancer diagnosis. In these scenarios, it can be really helpful to think about the best case. So if things go well, you'll still have many years of life to enjoy with your family. Focusing on that gives you the strength that you need to keep going forward. And I can vouch for that, obviously, having been through that experience myself. So how much time and energy do you spend worrying about things that you cannot control? Like, just pause and think about that for a second. If you are like most people, that's probably a lot. A huge portion of life is completely out of our control. So if you focus on those things, you are going to be constantly worried. You can't control the actions of others. You can't control local events or global events. You can't control the traffic, the weather, what other people think. You can't control getting old. You can't control the past or the inevitability of death. There are so many things, right? There's so many things that are out of our control. Worrying about those things is a complete waste of time. It literally will not change a thing except make you feel awful. And what's worse, it can totally divert your focus from the things you actually can control. So when you fear things outside your locus of control, you have less energy to use on the things where you can make a difference. Let's think about things that you can control. You can control your own responses. You can control what you think about and how you think about things. You can control the way you treat other people. You can control what information you consume and how you spend your time. You can control your sleep habits, your self-talk, how you treat your body. There's so many things that you can focus on that you do have control over. So when you focus on those, your fears will lessen and life is going to start to significantly improve. When you find yourself dealing with fear, stop and ask yourself, what things are under my control? Once you identify those things, you give all your time and energy to them. Avoid spinning your wheels over things that you have no control over and turn your fear into action. Fear almost always is rooted in a scarcity mentality. In other words, you are afraid that you won't have something you want or desire. And you're afraid that you're going to lack whatever, fill in the blank, love, respect, money, security, health, friends, possessions. They're all really good things, and it's not wrong to desire them, but it is super easy to become so fixated on them that you become fearful of not having them. So what do? We call in gratitude. And I love this. I do this with my clients all the time. Gratitude completely shifts your perspective. So fixing your gaze on the things you already have, it is really, really hard for gratitude and fear to coexist. They're like oil and water. In fact, a study of breast cancer patients showed that those women who intentionally practiced gratitude were much less likely to experience anxiety around their illness. So when you feel that fear starting to rise in you, check your gratitude, embrace gratitude, look for ways to be grateful that are specifically related to your anxiety. So if you're worried about a medical condition, express gratitude for the health care that's available to you. Are you worried about losing your job? Express your gratitude for the chance to find something even better. So when you're consistently grateful, it is really hard to be fearful. You're going to be more aware of all the good things you have. There are a number of ways that you can do this, and whatever sort of fits your personality, fits your lifestyle. You can do anything from keeping a daily gratitude journal to enlisting a friend and sending like a weekly text message of gratitude to them. Send out like a handwritten note card to someone once a month, or just verbalize it. Tell your loved ones why you love them. Worst case, get on social media and post about your gratefulness. So there's a million different ways that you can do it, but call in that gratitude and you'll see that it will immediately reframe and help you face that fear. Fear consistently takes us out of the present, right? So instead of focusing on the here and now, you're constantly worried about what could happen in the future. So worrying about bad things that might happen keeps you from enjoying the good things that actually are happening. Practicing mindfulness and meditation keeps you firmly rooted in the present, and all of your energy and focus is given to the current moment. So simply put, you're basically going to be fully present in the present. There's a difference between mindfulness and meditation. So mindfulness, generally speaking, simply just means that you're being aware of and savoring the present moment without thinking about anything else. So any activity that you do can be done mindfully. When you eat mindfully, you're savoring every bit that you eat and absorbing all the flavors. And when you go for a run mindfully, you're going to feel the burn in your muscles and focus on putting one foot in front of the other. So mindfulness is very much like a way of life. Meditation is a specific practice that will help you grow in mindfulness. So although there are many different forms of meditation, they all involve focusing on the present for a set period of time. So some meditations are designed to help you clear your mind. Others promote feelings of peace or love or compassion. So if you've never practiced meditation, there are a number of tools available that provide tons of guidance. I'll put some in the show notes here, things that you can check out. I love Calm. I use Calm all the time personally, but there are many, many options. The more that you meditate and you practice your mindfulness, the less anxiety you're going to experience. And instead of being preoccupied with the future and this imagined reality, you're going to savor the present. All right. So this is probably one of my favorite little tips and tricks that I encourage my clients to use. This next thing is called scheduling your worries. And before I get into that, I just want to take a moment and talk a little bit about a mini course about mindfulness. It's a 3-week mini course, and you get an email every day that teaches you a little bit about mindfulness and gives you an exercise that you can try. And you come out of it in the end with a series of exercises that you can sort of customize to fit your own life and pick and choose the things that feel right for you. If you feel like you are really having struggles with fear, struggles with anxiety, reach out to me and let's talk a little bit about how I can better help you tackle some of those things. So with that said, let's talk about scheduling our worries. One of the big challenges when you're dealing with fear is that it's always present, right? We said it's never going away. At any moment, some worry pops up in your mind. It disrupts your day. It steals your energy. It makes it super hard to focus. And on top of this, a lot of people find it really difficult to turn their brain off. So once that anxiety sort of worms its way into your mind, it's super hard to stop thinking about it. So as a result, that same fear circles in your brain. It goes again and again and again. It's just this vicious cycle that's so difficult to break. So one technique that I recommend is scheduling a time when you are allowed, when you will think about the things that worry you. Scheduling your worry kind of works like this. So you set aside like 15, 30 minutes a day, no more. During that time, you're going to write down everything that worries you. You don't have to create a single solution. You just have to get things down on paper. Get them out of your system. So if you start to worry about something at any other point in the day, you tell yourself that you'll think about it during your worry time. And in the beginning, this is challenging. It's really hard to put off your worries. But over time, it will become easier. So you control your mind, and you'll find that it's less difficult to clamp down on that sort of swirling anxiety. Again, you can control your thoughts. So this is one way that you can do that. And though you may not be able to really control the circumstances that are causing the fear, you can decide what you want to think about them and when you want to think about them. Dealing with fear is a lonely battle, and sometimes it is really hard. It's waged by yourself in your mind. And most of the people around you have no clue, no idea what you're dealing with, especially if you're able to maintain your external appearances and look like nothing's fazing you. Getting support from other people is crucial if you regularly deal with worry. It's good when you discuss your thoughts and your feelings with other people because you begin to see a different perspective. You need to get encouragement from people. You need to get clarity from people. And having people who can shine light into the darkness of your fear is really important. Obviously, you can talk to your friends. There are online support groups. There are local support groups. It is okay if you struggle mightily with fear. Every person has their own share of worry and anxiety. You are not any different. Talking to other people about your struggles can go a long way in helping you make progress, and it can definitely lighten the load. So in light of this, be compassionate to yourself. Don't try to deny the existence of your fear or act like you've got it all together. Just accept and love yourself, fears and all. And remember that if you're unwilling to accept yourself until you completely overcome your fear, you're going to be perpetually unhappy. The reality is that fear will never be completely absent from your life. Even the most courageous people in the world feel anxiety from time to time. If you want to overcome fear, you have to have the courage to first accept yourself as you are. Brené Brown said, "I now see how owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we'll ever do." It's a brilliant quote. Own your story. Own the factors that cause fear to rise in you, and own the actions that are necessary to still those fears in you. Okay, let's talk about courage. Courage, and I want to be very clear about this, courage is not the absence of fear. A person who never feels fear isn't courageous. They're crazy. The world can be a pretty scary place, and there are a lot of reasons to feel afraid. Courage is feeling afraid and acting anyway. Courageous people acknowledge their fear, and then they move forward to overcome it. Nelson Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." It is okay to feel fear, but to avoid letting it conquer you. It's okay to feel worry, just don't let it rule you. We've talked about all these different ways to deal with the fear and the worry, but these techniques aren't going to really eliminate the fear. They're just going to make it easier for you to cope with it. It's not going to be easy to overcome. It takes consistent work. You have to have courage to come face to face with those things that frighten you. And in order to do that, you have to expend energy to get those thoughts under control. I promise you that the work is worth it. You are going to experience freedom and peace and confidence. You won't easily be rattled by circumstances. You'll know that you can handle anything that comes your way. So I'm going to leave you with one last quote. Judy Blume said, "Each of us must confront our own fears. We must come face to face with them. How we handle our fears will determine where we go with the rest of our lives, to experience adventure or to be limited by the fear of it." If you'd like to connect with me or work with me one-on-one on living more outrageously in your own life, please visit live-outrageously.com. Well, outrageous friends, it has been my honor and my pleasure to have you here today. I hope that you took away some outrageous ideas for your own life. If you enjoyed yourself, make sure that you are subscribed to Live Outrageously with Lady Grey on whatever your podcast app is. You can also connect with me personally on Facebook at facebook.com/outrageousLadyGrey or on Instagram at lady.gray. Also be sure to check out our podcast website at www.liveoutrageously.com. Once again, this is Lady Grey encouraging you to go out and live outrageously.